You are now tuned in to the Chaotic Culture Podcast.
It's the KKP on your mother flipping airways. Hear the name ringing through the halls and the stairways. You were listening to a pod that can segue all the latest topics guaranteed to fill your headspace. It's a safe place to voice your opinion. Say what you feel just like you're a kid again. Kid to pro and friends, black as obsidian. Chaotic culture, that's the world we living in. So what's the word?
Well, today has been a day, to say the least. And let me just preface this by saying that I came on this pod, or I had planned to come on this pod, specifically to talk about something else. I had all the plans in the world to talk about my review on The Acolyte and why I think a lot of fans, including a lot of Star Wars fans, were pretty much just blowing shit out of proportion. Instead, I come here on this pod to talk about the bombshell that everybody, of course, has heard at this point in time. If you hadn't heard about it, you were living under a rock. And before we get into that, of course, let me introduce the pod properly. So, good morning, afternoon, and evening, ladies and gentlemen, whenever you are listening to this, and welcome to another edition of the Chaotic Culture Podcast, the pod where chaos rules and black culture is supreme. Live from the 401, or is it 410? I can never remember this damn area code. But live from Baltimore, it's your boy, Ked the Pro, aka the Calculated Millennial, aka the Encore presentation. Now, can I get an encore? Do you want more? Aka your favorite toxic adjacent king, Ked the Poet, Kev the Closer, all that good stuff. The 843 is me. Baltimore is the place to be. Always chaotic, never toxic most days. Back again, once again, with your favorite black culture highlights and black culture shenanigans. Now, this is a solo pod today, so I'm going to try my best to keep this as short as I possibly can. I may only need 20 or 30 minutes of your time. I do have a planned episode that should be coming out, if not this week, next week, and then we'll be on hiatus. And the reason for the hiatus, obviously, is because I want to take the opportunity to recharge, refocus, and retool the podcast to where I think it could be even more successful than it is currently. But in the meantime, I did at least want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in to this podcast. As far as our Spotify listens across the board, not including YouTube, we have over 6,000 listens. So again, I appreciate you. 6,000 all time, guys. I'm not that big of a podcast. It's not 6,000 per episode yet. I would love for it to be. Goodness knows I would, but we ain't there yet. We ain't there yet. Well, we going to keep going. But with that in mind, 6,000 listens all time across all DSPs, with the exception of YouTube. YouTube, I got to look at the numbers differently because people actually listen on YouTube more than they listen on Spotify or Apple, which is crazy. But some people don't have those DSPs. So it's good to know that at least YouTube is now curating the views and the listens. And the more that we do this, of course, obviously, the more that we'll get those listens and those views. So just keep rocking with us. Tell your friends about us. Tell your family about us. And definitely keep tuning in because we got more stuff in store. Now, let me get on to the things that I wanted to briefly talk about before we dive deep into this bombshell, obviously. So I did attend BlurredCon. As of now, it would have been a week and a half ago. And let me just say that I thoroughly enjoyed myself. And you will actually get to see an article through Off Black Mag soon. Shout out to Aaron for the interview questions. I tried to keep them as short as possible, but I did go into detail on a few of those questions. But getting the actual chance to go to BlurCon 2024 was definitely an experience, to say the least. It almost felt like DreamCon 2022. And DreamCon was kind of on a smaller scale at that time before it blew up the way that it did. But BlurCon really felt like a very, very intimate con. On top of that, BlurCon was not just a con run by black people, but it felt like a con that was specifically curated and created for black people. And of course, there were those who were, you know, non-black folk that were there, obviously celebrating the con as well. But you could tell that this was a black con. One of the things that I really, really liked about BlurCon was the the ground floor. Obviously, the ground floor, that was where the parties were being held, and that's also where the game room or area was. And it wasn't just your typical Xbox, PlayStation, and the latest Nintendo, whether it be, the Switch or the Wii, but it was more than that. I literally saw Super Nintendos there. I saw a PS1 there. I saw a Sega Genesis there. We saw the arcade blocks there. It was crazy. Now, it wasn't like a whole lot, and I do hope that they are able to expand on those arcade blocks, because what I wouldn't give to play Soul Calibur on an arcade game again. But that's the nerd in me talking. Still, this con really felt like a con for black people. The actual panels that I got a chance to go to were really phenomenal, and even though some were very late night, it was still fun and it was still vibes. And I can honestly say that I enjoyed every single one. Now, there were those that were a little more crowded than others, but it is what it is. So, just to briefly touch on that, I just wanted to say how much I enjoyed BlurCon. Now, BlurCon is a con that I really want to go to regularly. It's not going to be in the summer this next year. It's actually going to be in winter or close to the beginning of spring. Now, I don't know about y'all, but again, I ain't no cold weather baby. And this is DC we talking about. I mm, I guess we'll have to see. I guess we'll really just have to see. I do want to go. I truly, truly do want to go. And I'm going to do my part to make sure that I go again. It's just crazy that instead of it being a whole 12 months, it's only 7 months from now. But it's still like, okay. And then as far as the behind the scenes problems, no con is perfect. There's still going to be some things like this pod actually did submit for a panel. Now, they didn't get back to me until almost close to the con, but then they were like, well, we had you on a wait list, but you're able to present to the VIPs on that Thursday, then we'll make sure that you get a panel spot next year. Now, that sounded dope, except for the fact that Thursday I was still on an 8 to 5 schedule, and I work in Baltimore. So there was no way I was going to be able to make it all the way from where I am down to Arlington unless I could host my panel after 7 p.m. The problem with that, of course, is that they only did panels from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. on that Thursday. So we missed the boat on that one. That being said, I am going to try again. And with it being so close around the corner, I'm going to get with the team. We're going to try and figure out a good panel idea that we can run with. And then from there, we'll submit it. And hopefully, we'll be able to get it. And I think that what I'll do this time for a panel idea is actually include more Black culture songs, because we were going to do it strictly based off anime songs, anime openings and closings. But I think that if you have a good mix of songs, whether it be from our favorite songs throughout the 90s, 2000s, or from our favorite cartoons, or just from our favorite television shows of the past, we're going to make it more nerd based. So I'm looking forward to it. And if you don't know what idea I'm talking about, I only gave you a little bit of it. So don't try to steal it, because You ain't gonna get it. But anyway, again, I had prepared to do a review on The Acolyte and talk about how much I liked the series. Yes, clunky storytelling aside, it was still good in my eyes. It's not the worst thing that I've seen. And there were a lot of Star Wars fans talking about, oh, how this is terrible, this is bad, it's the worst thing I've ever seen. Let me just say that if The Acolyte is the worst thing you've ever seen, then you have not watched a lot of bad television. I'm just gonna say that you have been spoiled in your television watching, because when I say that this was nowhere near close to being the worst thing that I've ever seen, I'm just saying I've seen anime that I will never touch again. And I don't and but just from my perspective, there's like shows that I will never touch again. The Acolyte is not that bad, but I'm going off on a tangent. I just wanted to point out how much I like the series, and I will do a review for that show at some point. But that's not why I'm here, at least not anymore. Obviously, we got to talk about I can't really call it an elephant in the room because that represents the ops. So we got to address the big donkey in the room. And for those who had not heard, you must be living under a rock. But this morning, and I'm recording this as of Sunday, July 21st, as of this morning, Joe Biden has decided not to accept the nomination from his party, which means effectively he is dropping out of the race and he will only be a one-term president. Considering his age, I doubt that he would run again. Now, of course, I did not watch the the GOP. I just would see snippets of whatnot. I refuse to watch the Republican National Convention. I did see some foolishness because, of course, clips that float around on social media. You get to see Amber Rose making a speech. And can I be honest with y'all? I've never been like the biggest fan of Amber Rose to start, but I mean, as far as like what she would do as far as her quote unquote pee walks, I thought that, or slut walks, I guess. I don't know what she would do, but I know that I guess they're not really run by her, but her endorsement of it used to be, I guess, encouraging because it shows that she was, pretty much endorsing this idea that women could be who they are without judgment, and that they could have the body autonomy that they are seeking. But her endorsing DJT and speaking at the Republican National Convention just shows me that Amber Rose is not an activist. She's an opportunist. And Jocelyn had clocked her correctly when it comes to her attitude and how she operates. And this is why I don't want to hear Amber Rose ever say the N word ever again. Not ever. No. Nah. But I'm getting, again, away from the topic here. There were some things about the RNC that just was like, wow, how are they even letting this go on? Obviously, Terry Bollea, who most of us know as Hulk Hogan, actually made a speech at the Republican National Convention. And can I just say, Hulk Hogan is who we all knew he was. So this was not surprising, just even more disappointing. So with that in mind, Terry Bollea deserves the life that he deserves. I'm trying not to cuss on this app. I'm trying not to cuss on this pod specifically. You might hear a couple of cuss words come out. And I have some very choice words for Terry Bollea because I refuse to call him Hulk Hogan any longer. But I'm a chill. because that's not the big thing that we have to worry about now. Still, it was obvious that DJT was going to accept the nomination, especially him surviving that assassination attempt. He's trying to get the sympathy vote. Now, whether you believe it's staged or not, listen, any idea shared here is not the thoughts and feelings of the Chaotic Culture podcast. So whether you believe that assassination attempt was staged or what have you, that is all on y'all. Y'all can have that discussion. I'm not going to touch that specifically. I'm just going to say y'all thought that Joe Biden had some cognitive issues. Go listen to that acceptance speech by DJT. You're going to be, I'm just going to say you are going to leave that video and wonder how many brain cells did you truly just lose. But I would not wish that on my worst enemy. That is an hour and a half that I don't want anybody to go through. And I just listened to snippets of it. And again, how that guy got to be anybody's candidate, much less anybody's president, is unfathomable. At least to me, it is. But I should always say never underestimate the stupidity of Americans. Because, yeah, there's a reason why they don't want people to be educated anymore, because they want power. That's really all this is about. It's about power. If me personally, I don't get it. I don't think I would ever want that much power in the world, but that's just me. But still, it's all about power and control. And I want to touch on that a little bit, but again, we'll circle back to that. Still, the RNC was cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And yet, the biggest news out of all of that was Joe Biden stepping aside, promising to finish out his term, and then endorsing Kamala Harris as the Democratic nominee for President of the United States. Now, let me be 100% clear. Kamala is not perfect. Nobody is. She is running for what people call the most powerful seat in the world, but also it is the most scrutinized seat in the world. The presidency often gets blamed for stuff that is well beyond their power. And so I just have to make that clear that if you don't understand the three branches of government, please do your research and go look up the legislative, the executive, and the judicial branches. Take a government and a civics class before you start commenting on here. But we are talking about a biracial Black and Indian woman, or Jamaican and Indian woman, if you want to get technical. Jamaican is her nationality. Black is her race. Indian is also her race and nationality. But again, yes, she is still a Black woman. But to be a woman and run for president, much more so a Black woman, this is probably going to be the most difficult time in her life. And this is probably going to be the most polarizing election in our lifetimes, because it's either her or we decide to reelect DJT again. And this time, they have an agenda behind them. That agenda is Agenda 47 and Project 2025. If you have not read up on Project 2025 or Agenda 47, I implore you to do so. Because the language in those plans and those policies is very, very dangerous. I know that people on the right like to joke that, oh, America is not a democracy, it's a constitutional republic. Guys, a constitutional republic is a form of democracy. It's not a pure democracy, no, but it's still a form of democracy. What are we even talking about here? But they joke about that. But when I say that Project 2025 and Agenda 47 pretty much strips down the powers of the other three branches of government and gives more power to the executive branch, that's the kind of society that I'm scared of. Because now we always say that, or at least I always like to say that America's not a true democracy, it's a plutocracy. But now we're talking about, I don't want to say a dictatorship. That might be a little too wild and a little too off the cuff. But it's literally a borderline autocracy if we decide to let this guy become president again. And you think people would be like, why would I want to vote for a crazy dude again? Considering that the first time he won, he lost the popular vote. The time that he lost the popular vote and he lost the electoral college. So you would think that the majority of Americans are just like, yo, I don't want this dude around. Again, why are we still dealing with this? But the right won't let him go. They just won't. So that's why I said he has to lose this time. Because if he loses this time, I don't know if it'll make much of a difference, but at least we can keep DJT out of office for the remainder of his life. But I do think that Trumpism is still here to stay, especially amongst the GOP. That mindset isn't going anywhere anytime soon unless it is totally stamped out and crushed. And that mindset is of power and control. I just want to say that if you are a black woman, and yes, Kamala, again, is not perfect. There were certain policies that Kamala had to follow that did not make her look good as a DA and an attorney general. She had to follow them, but it still doesn't depict her in a good light. With that in mind, she's been a good senator and a good vice president. Not that you would be able to do much as vice president, except break a tie in the Senate whenever it comes out, and of course get on platforms and promote the platform of the party and the platform of the president. Other than that, there's really not much to do as far as actual presidential duties because you're literally the vice president. And I also wish people would read up on what the vice president actually has. Because I done seen some dumbass questions on social media already, like, well, as vice president, what exactly did Kamala do? Before you ask that question, look up the responsibilities and the duties of the vice president of the United States. I'm tired, y'all. I learned this shit in high school. Has our public education system gone to shit that badly that y'all can't even figure out exactly what the duties of the president and the vice president are? Has it devolved that much that we're asking these questions? I literally had a former college colleague asking what extraordinary thing Kamala did for black people as vice president. And I'm just like, that is so frustrating to get questions like that. I d- and I'm thankful that there was somebody who actually kind of checked her on her status because it came off as just completely ignorant. That in mind, I'm just going to say this. I'm still voting for Kamala. I can't tell you how to vote, obviously. Y'all already know how I feel about DJT. Y'all know how I feel about him and his policies. But I'm just going to say this. Give me a second while I try to get my thoughts together. Do I wish that the Democratic Party made this decision long before the convention? And yes. Do I think that they should have made this decision sometime last year? Yes. As far as Joe running again, do I think that he should have ran again? I can't really say that in hindsight because I think that he truly thought that he had the best chance to win re-election and to do what he thought was best for the American people. But considering his age, considering his health as of late, I think that people were obviously concerned. And yes, one bad debate, they pushed the panic button. And I really wish that they hadn't done that at this stage of the game. But it is what it is. And I think that Joe still had a decent presidency, despite how you feel about Palestine, despite how you feel about Ukraine, despite any of that, as far as the American people is concerned, outside of inflation. But inflation is unique, is not unique to America, especially at this time, because everybody's going through inflation because of COVID. We're still dealing with the after effects of that. But again, despite how you feel, I truly think that Joe was a decent president, at least in terms of policies for America. Now, we could talk about his global policy and whatnot, but again, to be the president of the United States of America pretty much means that you're probably going to support a certain group of people that a lot of people right now have a huge contempt for. Not religiously. We're talking more so the country itself and the leaders of the country and what they're doing to Palestinians. But again, I do think that at least he was doing his best with what he had, and that he is a true man of faith, and that he was trying to do things out of the kindness of his heart. Again, questionable pass aside, questionable policies aside, for the most part, I think that he was at least a very even-tempered president, if I could try to toe that line of neutrality. As for Kamala Harris, I do think that she is well equipped. I do think that she is qualified. She's more qualified than a lot of other people. She's more qualified than DJT, that's for sure. And some people were asking that question too. They're like, well, what is her qualifications? Like she wasn't a DA, an AG, a senator, and currently vice president. She has the qualifications. She's been in politics for a minute. My fear is that America will see a black/biracial woman running for president, and that misogyny/racism is going to kick in, and they're just going to vote for DJT. More specifically, white women, black men, and shooting maybe even some black women. I'm hoping that's not the case. I am praying for the best outcome and that we don't get punished for another 4 years. We've already seen just how careless DJT is in the seat of the presidency. So the fact that that side would want to run him again, I mean, I guess it ain't so crazy for them because it put money in their pockets, allegedly. But for me, it's like, I don't know. And I had one of my brothers say that, I'll be all right because God is still God, and He is, no matter who wins. Let me just say that as a 33-year-old black man, I will probably be all right. But I got an 11-year-old niece who, when she gets older, may not have the same rights that a lot of my cousins did in the 90s and the 2000s and the 2010s if we let this happen. I've got god brothers across the wazoo in scouting who may or may not know what this will mean for their kids. I've got a brother who I'm just gonna say that my brother has more radical thoughts than I do. Shout out to Nick, man. He's definitely my biggest supporter on this pod. But I just say that because I don't want to like ruin anything. But if he has children, he's gonna have to wonder what that means for his children. We've already seen what a 6-3 majority conservative Supreme Court has done and what that will do to us and for us in the next 40 or 50 years. Like the decisions that they have made have really been detrimental to us in both the short and the long term. So, all things considered, if DJT wins and continues to pack the court with conservative justices who, mind you, are going to be loyal to him and not the rule of law, that's a scary thought. It's a very, very scary and concerning thought. Now, again, I'm not here to try and endorse politicians and political platforms. I'm just telling y'all how I feel. And from the way things look, again, I wish that the Democratic Party had made this decision a long time ago as opposed to 107 days before Election Day. So that way Kamala can build that coalition that she's looking for and be gung ho about it. But I'm still going to put my faith that she can pull out a victory. I'm just really, really concerned because I know that politics aside, politics be damned if you don't like her based off the color of her skin or you don't like her based off her nationality. I done seen black men who are quote unquote foundational black Americans who try to attack her because she is of Jamaican and Indian descent, as opposed to, I don't know, her parents being born in America. Never mind the fact that or how some of the people on the right are claiming, well, she grew up in Canada, as if she didn't spend enough time in the United States. Like, just some of the stuff that I've been seeing is just like, yo, the misogyny and the racism, and even the subtle misogyny and the subtle racism that comes out of some people's mouths is really, really concerning. So I just pray that those of us who are affiliated with the Democratic side of the ticket, I ain't gonna say that you're a Democrat per se, because yeah, that can change at the drop of a hat, honestly. But whatever the case may be, if you fall to the left of the aisle, I just hope that we're able to build that coalition around Kamala and push her to the end. So that way this country can at least start going somewhere. But just from the way that certain people acted when Obama became president and the fact that they didn't even elect Hillary when they had ample opportunity to do so, I'm just going to say my faith right now is definitely the size of a mustard seed. And not for my sake, but just for other people's sakes. Again, as a black man in America, I might be okay. But if I have kids, I don't know if they're going to be okay. I don't know if my niece is going to be okay. I don't know if my baby cousins are going to be okay. Reproductive rights for women would pretty much be up in smoke. It already kind of is thanks to the Supreme Court, depending on where you live. The Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act, certain landmark cases that might get overturned again with a supermajority in the Supreme Court. More redlining. That's really one of the things, is that more redlining, so that way Republicans can stay in power. More. This is a difficult thing for me to talk about because I'm just so deeply, deeply concerned. And I'm trying not to ramble as much, but this is just very, very concerning. Not because I don't have faith in Kamala. It's just I don't have faith that the American people are going to do the right thing, because they are going to let this nation fall in the hands of Christian nationalism and those people on the extreme side are going to do all that they can to destroy public schools, destroy reproductive rights, and try to make us into a Christian nation, which I am a Christian. I am a follower of Jesus Christ. And that is something that I do not think will please Christ. Becoming a solely Christian nation. That is really theoretically blasphemous if we want to get into real details about it, but that's another topic for another discussion and for another time. I just really hope that we as a people can actually, again, go into this with the right mindset, back her, and push her through. Because I know with it being the way that it is, with it being so close to the Democratic National Convention, there's going to be a lot of questions. They're going to wonder, one, Kamala's name technically wasn't on the ballot, at least not as a presidential candidate. So what challenges is she going to face? Will there be a way for the Democrats to actually put her name on the ballot? And then will those delegates that were won by Biden during the primaries seamlessly switch over to Kamala? The biggest thing is, of course, are there going to be any challengers? Those who ran against Biden, are they going to come back and say, wait a minute, I deserve my time? Or is this going to be the opportunity for them to be like, you know what? No, let Kamala run. We'll have to wait and see. We will have to wait and see. Those are going to be the biggest questions. I really hope that the American people does the right thing, and I really hope and pray to God that we don't screw this up again. But damn it if I don't have PTSD from 2016. I do not want to think about what happened in November 2016, because yeah, that was not a good period. And knowing what we saw in the 4 years that DJT was president, especially in that last year when the pandemic hit, knowing that he dissolved the pandemic response team, do y'all really want to put yourselves through that again? If he does the same thing, dismantles the pandemic response team, and we get hit with another pandemic from a completely different virus, and millions more die, then what? Then what? Anyway, guys, I've kept you here long enough. I said that I was going to try to keep this around 30 to 40 minutes, and I'm hitting that 39-minute mark. So, overall, my closing thoughts. It feels like America is really just being one big ass TV drama Better yet, one big ass soap opera. Boy, this shit feel like The Young and the Restless, As the World Turns, and those Spanish telenovelas. Oh, God. Listen, listen, boy. I'm gonna call this episode As America Turns because this definitely feels like a damn soap opera or a stage play or something. Are we in a Matrix show? Like, where's the red pill and the blue pill? Can I get out of here? Just from the way that this country's been acting, bro, I don't need to be here for real, for real. And guys, let me also just say that if you don't want to be here anymore, dual citizenship or become a citizen of another country. Y'all talking about getting your passports and flying off to a different country. Listen, the passport will get you in the country, but that's about it. You got to find a way to stay. Thank you to Tenchi for pointing that out on the timeline today. But I really hope that we can do the right thing, y'all. I'm going to do my part. I just hope that the rest of my fellow brethren will do the same and that we'll coalesce behind her. Plus, she's D9. She's Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. She's an AKA. So you already know what time it is, man. Now, again, this ain't for me to tell any other members of D9 that they should just go support her because she's a member of D9. Because clearly, I got some brothers in my frat who the coon levels are through the roof. Let me just say that. And if you got a problem with what I said, we can chat it up outside of this pod. But yeah, I got some. I got some delusional brothers in my frat. That in mind, I think the majority of the frat, as well as the other members and the other D9 organizations, are gonna find a way to coalesce around her and help build her up. And I think that so far, a lot of the donors who were scared to donate to Joe are donating to Kamala in numbers. Apparently, she broke 25 million donations in less than 5 hours, which is incredible. So we'll see what happens. I'm hoping that Biden gives over his war chest to her. And I'm just hoping that, all is well and that we will be able to see the first woman to become president of the United States and the first black/first Indian woman at that. I'm just hoping that other side doesn't disappoint me like the way that they did Hillary, because boy, they disappointed me. White women were the reason that Trump became president. Tell me I'm wrong. So I'm hoping that this time will be different now that we've seen Trump as president. I'm just hoping that people will do the right thing and not stay home. I know that's a tall task because some people were disillusioned with Biden's presidency and some people are disillusioned with Kamala's past. Now is not the time for that. Cynicism and nihilism will be our very end if we don't do something this election. So I'm encouraging everybody who listens to this pod, please register to vote early, or if you decide to go to the polls this November, do that too. But please vote. When we vote, we get to enact policies that we want to see help our communities thrive. And it's not just about the presidency, because pretty much the presidency really is like the big figurehead. But what's going to be the most consequential in this election is voting down ballot. Your congressmen, your senators, even your local politicians, school board, sheriff, mayor, if they're on the ballot, the governors, if you're on the ballot, your state senators, your state house, your city council. All of that is important, and even more so important than the presidency. We just know that if a certain person becomes president again, shit will get incredibly chaotic for this country, and not in a good way. Again, I don't spend enough time talking about this shit, y'all. We see what's been going on and what's happening. We just hope that this election truly is worth it, and it's going to definitely be the most consequential and most polarizing election in our lifetime. With that in mind, y'all, I am going to get up out of here. I'm going to quickly do a rundown, and then it'll be time to sign off. So before I do the rundown again, just let me know what your thoughts are on this whole situation. Let me know what your thoughts are about Biden actually stepping down and not running again. What are your thoughts about Kamala's chances of becoming president? Do you think that she'll get any challengers, or is it going to be smooth and seamless? Let me know how you feel. Also, let me know how pretty much the Democratic Party was a bunch of idiots to wait this long. And or tell me how you really feel. Tell me if you ain't got no bearings on it. If a neutral party in this whole situation, you don't care who wins or what have you. But if you're a Trump supporter, don't even bother coming on this pod. I'm sorry. Don't even bother responding about how you feel and shit like that. I don't want to hear nothing you got to say right now. I don't. But I gotta make sure I keep it open for all my folk out here who really see this as a very consequential election. So, with that in mind, I'm about to go to bed, but let me go ahead and do this rundown. Big shout out to Shogo Hine inside the Mind of a Blurred, the gang. Inside the Mind of a Blurred is going to be having a panel at DreamCon on Friday. Please be sure that you check it out. I will be at the panel. So please be sure that you pull up on the gang, show us a lot of love, let us know how you're feeling, come ready to dive into some cartoon crazy antics with the gang. Again, shout out to Mike Check, Waifu. Stay tuned. You might be hearing from them soon. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Also, big shout out to Worst Generation Pod and Blanime Pod, formerly known as Anime After Dark. Big love to them. Shout out to the Truth and Transparency Podcast. As always, we're Brother X, the Culture Scientist, and Mr. Smith. Definitely shout out to It's So Real with Raquel and Onaji. Dad Needs to Talk with the Father of Ash, Analytical Where Shit Gets Critical, Geek Set Podcast, Anime Junkies 3 Weeks in a Podcast. Shout out to those anime girls, and of course, shout out to The Commute. For Black content creators, big shout out to Off Black Mag with Aaron, HBCU Anime with Evan, Yo to the Noobs. Big shout out to Erica. I hope that she's doing well. Big shout out to Cerberus Entertainment. Y'all already know. Shout out to the gang Tatted Poodle, the Geechee Gamer, who will also be at DreamCon, I believe. Kiana. Ooh, and I just said your government. God dog it. Q, Geechee, I can't wait to see you when you get there, boy. I hope you don't kick my ass when you see me. Oh man, but anyway, shout out to my boy Icarus Metro Comics. He will actually be back on the pod here really soon next season to talk about some new stuff that he's got going on. So big shout out to Calvin. Shout out to the gang Hub Taku. We see you out here, man. And definitely shout out to Vonnie getting into his indie wrestling bag. Shout out to Shelby with Simply Janine, Rose Less Traveled, and Simply Baked. Shout out to Strange Keith with Idols to Icons, and of course, our content creator, Toasty Marshmallow, as well as the other content creators who support this pod. That includes The Corner 5, Simone with By Simone Malcolm, Courtney with None of My Friends Watch Anime, 5 with Fight for Rage, Chris with Chris Manorame, happy birthday, Chris, and of course, Sham with One Punch Sham. And then shout out to Scuba Steve and Alpha with Blurred Mind Productions. For our black artists, of course, we got our very own NASA, we got Scoozy, we got Jack Union, Phil.me, Ellis Quinn, RJ Stackhouse, Quarter, Tyrone Leak Jr., Ari Lachelle, Zach Hines, Elena, Zaynab, Imogen, and Fortresses with Zach Hines. Let me not forget them because that's the band. Y'all already know. Shout out to the gang. And for our black businesses already paid by Dre, Fresheners, Righteous Minds by Timo, KSS Brand by Christina, Korean Cosmetics by Naima, Mind Over Money by Miss Tremaine, Studio Maho by Pat Yin. Big shout out to Concept Moon. Big shout out to She Designs 2 with Aaron. Shout out to Black Magic Lit Wands with Low and T. Shout out to H4 Creative with Zenobia. Real Estate Stone by Meredith. Soul by Bill by Mariah. Good vibes only with our very co-host NASA, and of course Scrappy Sentiment with our other co-host Sappy. Also, big shout out to Addison. I don't know if y'all remember from like season 1/2 when he came in talking about his Candle app, but Addison, my boy, got married to my girl Penny. They just had their wedding this past weekend, and I couldn't make it because I had to work. But congratulations on the nuptials. I love the both of y'all. Big shout out to y'all. I know that Addison's going to continue doing big things. And I know Penny is having the time of their life. And they're just ready to have a wonderful, wonderful family. So big shout out to y'all. And once again, congratulations on the wedding. And with that, guys, I'm done. Be sure that you like and share and subscribe to the Chaotic Culture Podcast on your favorite DSP. Please be sure that you go to patreon.com/Chaotic Culture Pod to catch bonus episodes and bonus content of the pod itself. You can donate at any of the 4 levels, whether it be $3, $5, $7, or $10. Once again, we appreciate your support. And of course, you can follow us on Facebook at Chaotic Culture Podcast. You can follow us on X/Twitter at Chaotic Culture 1. And you can follow us on IG at Chaotic Culture Pod. You can follow me, Ked the Pro. That's K3D the Pro on all social media. You can follow Miss Sappy at Scraps14 on all social media. You can follow Miss Nasa on all social media at I'm Nakaso. You can follow Law on IG at L.JR_96, and you can follow him on X at Law96_. You can follow Jay at Lee Trey on all social media, and of course, you can follow Scuba Steve on all social media at Scuba Steve 1428. And this has been another edition of the Chaotic Culture Podcast. So until next time, folks, remember, embrace the culture, chaos rules, be blessed, be safe, and God is love. And we are out.
It's the KKP on your mother flipping airways. Hear the name ringing through the halls and the stairways. You were listening to a pod that can segue. All the latest topics guaranteed to fill your headspace. It's a safe place to voice your opinion. Say what you feel just like you're a kid again. Kid the Pro and friends, black as obsidian. Chaotic culture, that's the world we living in. So what's the word?
You are now tuned in to the Chaotic Culture Podcast. And